Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. The diplomatic relations between Canada and India are turning to be bitter more and more with every single passing day, as Canada has pulled 41 diplomats from India after India threatened to revoke the diplomatic immunity. Now, Canadian Foreign Minister says this particular threat is unprecedented and violates the international law. At the same time, Canadian Prime Minister Mr. Justin Trudeau says that this crackdown on the Canadian diplomats by the Indian government is affecting the lives of the millions of people on both sides, both in Canada as well as in India. On the other hand, we have seen India's External Affairs Ministry has rejected the idea of violating the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. At the same time, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar says India has invoked diplomatic parity under the Vienna Convention because we had concerns about the continuous interference in our affairs by Canadian personnel. Now, these bilateral relationship between Canada and India hit a lowest ebb when Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said that Indian intelligence agency RAW was involved in the murder of a Canadian citizen, a Sikh leader, Mr. Hardeep Singh Nijjar, and the Indian side had denied its involvement in this particular murder. However, we saw the major international powers, including the US, urge the Indian side to cooperate with the Canadian authorities in this particular investigation. Now, in another major development, the Director General of the Australian Security Intelligence Organization has also endorsed the Canadian stance, and he says that he sees no reason to dispute Canada's allegations against India. We'll be taking up for discussion all these aspects regarding the bilateral relations between Canada and India. To talk more about that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Dr. Tughral Yamin. He's senior analyst. Dr. Yamin, thank you very much for taking time out for Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Also in the studio, we are honored to have been joined by Mr. Agha Iqrar Haroon. He's senior analyst. Mr. Iqrar, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. At the same time, on Skype, we are being joined by Professor Dr. Shazia Anwer Cheema. She is expert international relations. Dr. Shazia, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on Views on News tonight. Really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Dr. Yamin. Now, this particular threat by the Indian authorities to revoke the diplomatic immunity, what does that primarily depict?
Diplomatic pressure. The Indians said that their diplomatic presence was already too large. It was more than the Indian diplomats who were in Canada. But obviously we know that this is diplomatic pressure. The Indians are not happy with Canadians. Canadians are not happy with the Indians. The Indians have been very rude to Trudeau, actually, when he was there in the G20 summit, and even before that, and on a bilateral visit also. They were rude to him. And the fact of the matter is that the Indians have been wary of the Sikhs who are in Canada and who are supporters of a separate state of Sikhs, that is Khalistan. In Canada, there is a very large diaspora of Sikhs, and some of them vocal supporters of Khalistan. You might remember there was a aircraft which was hijacked and later blown up in the 1980s, and the blame was thrown on the Khalistanis. The Sikhs have been coming to Canada since the last century, early part of the last century. So there are large pockets of Sikhs all over Canada. And when this incident happened, in which a RAW operative went and killed Mr. Nijjar, obviously there was a backlash among the Sikhs, and the Sikhs want their leaders to react to it. They are Canadian citizens, so they have every right to tell their Prime Minister, hey there, wake up and speak up on our behalf. And that is exactly what Trudeau has done. Trudeau, irrespective of the fact that he has been not been treated well by the Indians, he has to speak up for his own citizens. And he has proof. He says, I have solid proof that RAW is behind it. So this goes to show that RAW is very active, and it is like the Israelis, it is killing and assassinating political rivals and things who they consider not good for their country. The Mossad has been doing it. They have been killing the Iranian scientists abroad in various places, inside Iran also. And we have evidence that that RAW has killed Jaish-e-Mohammed, so-called alleged activist in Daska. There were reports on the 14th of October in the newspapers that they have killed a prayer leader in Daska who is allegedly Jaish-e-Mohammed activist. So all these things go to indicate that India is very, very active. Indian intelligence is very active, and it is whatever Indian intelligence is doing is beyond the diplomatic norms. And this spike in the poor relationship between India and Canada is a result of the shenanigans of the RAW intelligence agency.
Right. Mr. Iqrar, what's your understanding? Do you agree with Dr. Yamin that India is trying to create a pressure on Canada after that particular saga and the accusations by Mr. Justin Trudeau of Indian intelligence agency RAW's involvement in the killing of the Sikh leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar? And do you think by creating such pressure tactics, India would be able to sway the position in its favor?
First of all, I'm 100% agree with Dr. Saab, but I will add one point. Basically, India is doing for its domestic consumption. India is portraying as a superpower, and you can say a superpower which heads the entire South Asia, and so-called also the Pacific. This is the reason India has reacted very sharply, and this reaction is uncalled for, because this is not the only Canada or Australia or England, UK. There are 5 international intelligence organizations that had testified the Indian involvement in what I call state-sponsored terrorism. And just Dr. Saab mentioned about the style of India and Israel, their mechanism. I would suggest a very interesting book, that is the Hostile Homelands, the New Alliance Between India and Israel. We must read this book. So he's absolutely right. India and Israel are working on a same design that includes even extrajudicial killings, international terrorism, because they know nobody would stop them. And even this all fiasco, technically I believe nothing would come out of that. And just imagine, America is little outspoken, and Australia also, but United Kingdom is still silent. Although after 1984, the major chunk of Sikhs who left India after a brutal, almost a genocide on Sikhs, to United Kingdom and Canada. And remember, there were more than 10,000 Sikhs women were raped. More than 2,000 children were brutally killed in 1984. So they left their country. And this is actually their second generation, who is already 30 plus of age. So they are very committed with their homeland. They wanted a homeland, that is a Khalistan, whatever you call it. And they had gone for a referendum, and referendum was a very great success. That referendum actually reshaped Indian-Canadian relationship and Indian-Great Britain relationship. Since the Great Britain PM is Indian origin, so he accepted all the demands of India, but Canada is not ready for that. So it will continue this, you can say, diplomatic fiasco, I call it, but the result would be nothing. Nobody is going to try India in any international court for, extrajudicial killing or state-sponsored terrorism out of its country.
Right, let me proceed towards Dr. Shazia. Dr. Shazia, do you think also this is a sort of a pressure tactic on the part of the Indian authorities, and do you think by using such pressure tactics they would be able to sway the things in its influence, by influencing on its side?
Yes, it could be the pressure tactics, but we have to see the historical perspective of this entire India-Canada relationship. Modi and Theodore, they were never in good terms. So they have this um, salty relationship between them. And the reason which I am looking in the research papers or from the independent sources, that India has been asking for intelligence on the Sikh individuals, certain individuals residing inside the Canada for last couple of years. So that's the basic um, bad blood between India and Canada, that India Modi government is asking for surveillance and intelligence on Sikh separatists and individuals whom they think they are linked with the Khalistan movement. And Canada is refusing for that. And then there comes the political narrative of it, that Theodore has the political majority in his cabinet from the Sikh descendants. So those Sikh the fragments of the political of the political uh, power show, they are forcing him to do certain things, and they are forcing him to take certain actions. So even yesterday, Indian foreign minister has said that we do not have problem with the Canadian state, we have problem with certain fragment of Canadian political system and the politics which flows from that system. So we have problem with that. So their problem is that Indian parliament and Indian power corridors must be cleansed, like the Hindutva cleansed from the Sikhs. So all those influential, powerful Sikhs who are now today in the capacity of influencing one way or the other the Canadian government, either they are themselves politicians or they are somehow related to the certain sectors which can give them the ability to influence. So India asked Canada to give intelligence on them. So this is not just killing of one person, it is a long way and a long history, and a bad blood between Theodore and the Modi government. So if the government of Canada would have been the other one, which is right now in opposition, the situation would have been very difficult. So from the day one, India is not complying. India is neither admitting, India is neither negating. India is just giving the impression that this situation or this allegation is not even worth addressing. And that's the part India is choosing, that whatever you have said, it is not even worth discussing, and we are not paying any attention to that. And that's again just because of the Theodore and his government, which is totally not complying to the Indian agenda of terrorizing Sikhs outside the country. So that could be the reason that now they are using the diplomatic parity, into that diplomatic parity thing, and it's Vienna Convention 11.1. So diplomatic parity also gives the countries the discretion that how many diplomats you can appoint in any certain country. So even these diplomatic parity thing is the against the violation of Vienna Convention. But India is I will not say India is using power tactics. India is using the techniques to linger on the situation, and India knows that Canada has very big stakes related to India. So their major population is coming from India. Their students are coming from India. Their labor, like the labor class, is also from India. So Canada is going to suffer and suffer a lot, and it will bend down to whatever we are saying. And we will take the India will take the stance that whatever has been said, it's not even worth debating. And that's the most sad and most unfortunate situation, that the five agencies of the world are giving a report. giving a perspective. So it should be out in open, and it should be in an international court, and it should be resolved properly through the proper word order. So there are legal systems, there are judicial system, international laws which are available to handle these type of situations. You remember the Khashoggi case. So Turkey provided all the information and intelligence out in open, and then both parties decided that whether or not they are going to pursue it, or which party is going to implement it, or which party is not going to be part of that investigation. So at least
Right.
there must be something at the Canada's part. There must be something out in open, so the people like us can see the clear picture, that how much information they have, and how much credible information they can provide. And then there must be a right course of legal action. And these diplomatic fiestas, these diplomatic punching between uh, right and left. We need 41 diplomats and you need 42 diplomats. That's just lingering on techniques. I don't even consider them pressing techniques.
Right, Dr. Shazia, you earlier mentioned this particular statement by Indian External Affairs Minister S.J. Shankar. Let me quote it again. The relationship right now is going through a difficult phase, but I do want to say that the problems we are with a certain segment of Canadian politics and policies which flow from that. Now, by looking at the second part of this statement, which you also raised earlier, do you think if a Canadian citizen would have been killed on the Canadian soil, in which the Canadian authorities would have the evidence against a certain country's intelligence agency, do you think if any other political party over there in Canada would have been in power, it would have reacted differently from that, the way in which Justin Trudeau has reacted?
No, I don't think so. The reaction would have been the same, but if that person would have not been a Sikh and a Canadian citizen, and of any other ethnicity, and there would have been an indication of alleged involvement of India, I think the reaction of India would have also been different. But now the issue is that if the five countries are saying that we have something, so India should have this, at least the minimal level of decency of asking that, can I see that, have something what you have, can I see that something on any platform. So let me tell you one thing, that India has a dual face in this situation. India is also negotiating and having meetings with the Canadian officials and the officials from the Five Eyes inside the India, and they are discussing the issue. This is not that small petty issue, but they are not disclosing this information on the Indian media. But there are ongoing continuous meetings between the officials of Five Eye and the intelligence agencies of India, inside India, outside India, and they are sharing information. And India knows that if India even slightly bored to the situation, its alleged involvement will be turned into the actual involvement, and which is there, because the prime ministers and presidents and premiers, they do not spread rumors inside the parliament. This is not the norm, this is not the uh, tradition, and the general public like us, we do not expect that to be a premier spreading rumors inside the parliament. So the parliament is has a sanctity, and we expect something tangible from that statement, and that statement has something tangible, and that's the most interesting thing. And they are trying to resolve it
The
via
Canadian
backchannel,
Prime Minister wouldn't
because
have come up with this particular allegation at the floor of the Parliament without any solid proof. Let me go back to Dr. Yamin. Dr. Yamin, do you think, by looking at this statement by S.J. Shankar, if the authorities were from any other political party, it would have reacted differently regarding the killing of a Canadian citizen on its soil?
Beg your
By
pardon.
looking at this statement of
S.J.
S.J. Shankar, that they have a problem with a certain segment of Canadian politics and the policies which flow from that.
You mean to say if there was a Congress minister, he would have said something else?
Would have reacted differently to this particular murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar?
I don't think so. If RAW is a rogue agency, and if RAW is going about killing people in foreign countries, what can a minister do, whether he's from BJP or she is from BJP or from Congress or from any other party? No, I don't think so. This is something which RAW is doing, and the Indian establishment is fully on board. They have no qualms in going about killing people. They have done it in Canada, they have done it in Pakistan. It's state-sponsored terrorism, and it's not going to stop unless the people raise a voice against it. And I think the Sikhs in Canada are not going to leave this matter like that. There are a large number of Sikhs who are politicians in Canada. More Sikhs are politicians in Canada than in India itself. There are more ministers in Trudeau's government than in BJP's government, so they are not going to leave it like that. If, in my opinion, they are going to raise it at all levels, and more than that, Sikhs have a notorious tradition of taking revenge, and they've been doing it. People who've been involved in the 1984 Blue Star operation, including a Sikh general, was killed. Indira Gandhi was killed. Have you forgotten it? Indira Gandhi was killed by her Sikh bodyguards. So the Sikhs are not going to leave them like that. They are going to take retaliatory measures. They are going to kill Indian operatives anywhere in the world to settle scores. And if the Sikh parliamentarians, ministers, etc., have their way, they are going to take up this issue at various forums. And I think this fact that India is involved in state-sponsored terrorism should be highlighted at all levels, because India always makes this an issue against Pakistan, which is absolutely wrong and absolutely false. So this particular incident should not be left. We shouldn't leave it like that. We should pursue it. We should also pursue it. That's my point.
So unwillingness of Indian side to cooperate in the investigation.
Why should they cooperate? Why should they
shouldn't they ideally be taking a lead role, offering themselves that if they are not actually involved in it, they should.
They are involved in it, Jawad Sahab. They are involved in it. Why should they? Why should they accept it?
They foresee the repercussions regarding the bilateral relation, not only with Canada. We have also seen the US urging them to cooperate in this investigation.
The Indians are so gung ho. They think that they can get away with murder. They think they are so rich and they are so powerful that they can do anything and get away with it. They think they are the West's baby like Israel is. They are not. And this is something which they should understand. They are not as dear to the Americans or Australians or other Western countries as Israel is. They have their own position and they take independent stance. Israel accepts whatever the West asks it to do. India does not have that kind of position. They will never offer themselves up to investigations. They are involved in it. Why should they accept the blame? They are going to play this game, and this is going to continue. But let me tell you, these Sikhs are not going to leave them. That's how I look at it.
So, Mr. Iqrar, do you think India is not going to cooperate in this particular investigation at the cost of the relationship with the major world powers?
Yes, it will not, because India is categorically involved in this case. And Five Eyes, five top intelligence networking of the world, they have already, they have proof, and they have given that proof to the Canadian government. And after having such proofs, the Canadian minister raised this alarm in their parliament. If you allow me, I want to mention a very interesting or very pertinent information. If you remember, in 1990, there was 125th anniversary of Government College Lahore, and a number of very powerful Sikhs who had been in Government College or their second generation was in Government College, they came to Pakistan to attend that. I had an opportunity to interview 4 of them as a reporter. I don't want to name them because one is already killed. So every of them was saying the same thing which Dr. Saab is saying, that we would never ever forgive and forget 1984, particularly the rapes of our women. And whenever we will have chance, we will take revenge of that. So I think the second generation, who is already very powerful economically, socially, they are in their 30 plus, they are ready to sacrifice anything for that particular cause they had been waiting for last 3 decades. So I am very confident Sikhs would continue their, you can say, they strive, and India would never share any information or would never be friendly with the international agencies on this particular issue. But at the end of I must say, right now, India is a strategic partner of the West to clamp and to control China in Indo-Pacific. That is why India is very confident that whatever I do, nobody would stop me. This is the point, and the time will test it. Simply.
Now, Australian spy chief has also said that there is no doubt in Canadian
Yes, there is no
education.
doubt.
So,
This
how
document-
big this particular claim by the Australian spy chief is for the denial of Indian side?
Tehami, let me add one. This document is signed by 5 eyes: UK, America, Canada,
New Zealand and
Australia, and New Zealand. And strangely, the New Zealand report is the strongest report. So there is no way out for India. But India is, you know, is in a you can say India is in a state of mind where he thinks he is the you can say the most favored person or favored country or favored partner in the Indo-Pacific, and India knows West is planning something big to clamp the Chinese water routes. So that is why India is very confident.
Don't you think the Indian authorities are considering at this point in time the kind of impact this kind of bitter relationship with Canada in particular would have on that 2% diaspora of Indian origin that is there in Canada?
India is not thinking about anything, and secondly, I tell you, BJP already lost election in Punjab, and Punjab is a basically land which is a basically you can say a land from where people go to Canada and England. So if they have any problem in visa, if they will won't take, don't find any visa, if the embassy would be closed down, it will favor India actually. Basically, the turbulent relationship of Canada and other international countries with India is favoring India because it will stop a route of Punjabis, Sikhs, to leave India to go for a better future. So it is actually benefiting India.
Right, Dr. Shazia, what's your understanding by looking at this statement of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau that this particular crackdown, the diplomatic crackdown by Indian authorities, is affecting the lives of the millions of people on both sides, both in Canada and India? I beg your pardon, Mr. Iqrar earlier mentioned that it happens to be 2%. It's actually 5% of the Indian heritage diaspora that is based in Canada. Don't you think Indian authorities should ideally be considering the kind of impact it would be leaving on that 5% population of Indian heritage residing in Canada?
The Indian side is advocating that right now that it's the atmosphere of violence and the culture of intimidation in Canada for Indians. So Indians are not safe there. So we do not recommend Indians to travel to and from Canada. And we are not giving any visa to Canadian, and we are not authorizing any recommendation for an Indian citizen to go to Canada. And India knows that Canada depend on Indian manpower and the trade itself, but more of the manpower. And the cutting the ties between India and Canada on the basis of the claim that Canada has created the culture of intimidation and there is an atmosphere of fear inside Canada is itself a fundamentally flawed propaganda. And it itself is the violation of the Vienna Convention. On that basis, you cannot refuse the visas, you cannot shut down the consulates and the missions inside the countries, because India has shut down more than 4 or 5 missions, Canadian missions in Bangalore, in Chandigarh, in other different 3 more cities for unknown time, unknown period. So India do not have the authority to do that under the Vienna Convention of 11.1, Article 11.1. It's the discretion of the country that how many diplomats and how many individuals they want in that country, and it's the discretion of the country that how many they can afford. But it's always a tradition that both the countries decide on mutual suggestions and based on the mutual facilitations that okay, so we are bringing these many numbers of diplomats and you are bringing that many numbers. So that's also a huge violation of Vienna Convention, and world is not talking about it. And our major question today is why world is so reluctant to reprimand India. So I see that India and West is in a bad is going through a bad divorce. They do not want to be in the relationship, but at the same time, if they go for that divorce, it's a very uh, ugly and it's a very expensive divorce. So and being India being the future net security provider of the Indo-Pacific and a counterbalance against China, that's the future ambitions of West, primarily of the Pentagon. So that they are in bad relationship, and they both know that we cannot go along like that for a longer period. But again, it's an ugly and expensive divorce. Both the parties are deciding like who is going to put more filth on the other party and who is going to get the more benefit from it. But history has told us that these type of relations cannot go for very long time. If the five countries are claiming that somebody has been killed in so and so soil by so and so agencies, so there must be some relevance to that. There must be some, India must show some at least some decency toward the credibility. I mean, for the face keeping, that the information is coming from so and so big agencies and it is credible. It is, and I will look forward to that. But as I have told you, that India is continuously demanding the Canadian government uh, to provide information, intelligence, continuous surveillance on the Sikh individuals inside the Canada. And India wants to treat Canada as its own Punjab. And that's not possible. Canada is a sovereign country, and this government has no intention to facilitate India. I don't know. I have my reservation
Dr.
about the
Shazia,
other
so is it
government
even
in the
legal
next
for a
election.
country to ask the other country to provide intelligence, as you have mentioned, as India does to the Canada in case of Sikhs?
Your entire point.
Dr. Shazia, is it even legal, considered legal under international law, if a country seeks the intelligence, as India is doing from Canada vis-a-vis Sikhs?
It again depends upon the discretion of both the countries and the mutual relations. Like UK and America, the MI and CIA, they have these mutual agreements and they shared information. So countries on bilateral or trilateral basis have agreements and MOUs that we will in future share the information, intelligence information. So I'm not sure
Agreement
about
or
the
a sort of a
legality,
treaty?
the legal aspect of that. But if Canada and India has no such bilateral agreement that we will share information, and that information primarily should have been related to the state security, but India is demanding the information and intelligence on individuals, the Canadian citizens, which Canada does not think as a threat, does not consider as criminal, which are criminal and threat and terrorist for the Indian state. So India is asking information about those individuals. So I think there is some legal impediments in that.
Right, Dr. Shazia Ali, we saw that Indian authorities had objections regarding the referendums that were held by Sikh community over there in Canada and other major world capitals, with the Canadian authorities repeatedly saying that they can't deny the Canadian citizens from their right of freedom of expression. So by holding a referendum over there on the part of the Sikh diaspora, what's your understanding regarding this? Should it be considered the interference when on the part of the Canadian authorities when they say that the Canadian citizens have the right to freedom of expression and they can hold that referendum?
Yes, it's the right of the Canadian citizens or the UK citizens. They can have a referendum. They can have a peaceful assembly. They can have the freedom of speech. So India cannot dictate its terms inside the India, outside the India, inside Canada. So Canada is basically the Punjabi diaspora is very strong in Canada, and in few provinces, Punjabi is even the official language, second or third language of those provinces, and is being taught in the universities. And the Punjabi diaspora is on the powerful places. By powerful places, I mean they are in the political scenario. So they have their own resentment toward the India regarding their Sikh genocide. So they show their resentment in whatever peaceful manner they suit they look forward to. And I respectfully disagree with the two gentlemen sitting in your studio that the Sikhs are revengeful and they will go for revenge. I don't think that. Punjabis are the most peaceful nation as long as we have experienced the ethnic profiling. So they will continue their resistance, but with peaceful manners. And now they have this. They have their diplomatic channels, and now they are are holding the positions, the political positions, which they can even influence. So I don't think that they are going to be violent again, and they never been violent in the history even. The violence is the tool which is forbidden in the Sikhi or the Sikhism.
Right.
So
Point well taken.
with that note, but they are powerful now. They were not powerful in the time of that massacre, the Indira Gandhi time, but they are. The situation is much different now, and this thing they will not let this go. But I don't foresee any suicide bombing or killing or murdering or hijacking a plane for that matter. They will choose the diplomatic relations. They will choose the diplomatic platforms, and they will try to indulge and involve the UK's or the American diaspora. And there is a huge Punjabi diaspora in the Europe even. And there is another interesting thing that the Punjabi diaspora outside the India and Pakistan are Punjabi diaspora. And they have the huge fan following in that matter. It doesn't
Right,
matter
point
you
well
are a
taken.
Sikh
Dr.
Punjabi or a
Shazia, let me
Muslim
take this
Punjabi.
point to the other participants also, Dr. Yamin. It's a very pertinent point that has been raised by Dr. Shazia. Had there been an intention of going for violent means on the part of the Sikh community, they would have not gone for kind of measures like referendum. What's your understanding about that?
You see, I do not agree with her. Referendum, yes, they have exercised their right to what they want to do, but Sikhs can be violent like any other people, like Hamas, like anybody. If you push somebody against a wall, they will retaliate. And perhaps she's forgotten what happened during the partition when when people migrated from across the Punjabs, both sides.
Okay,
the Sikhs, let me.
Please go ahead.
The Sikhs went on a killing spree. My mother, who's now, alhamdulillah, mashallah, 90 years old, she recalls terror stories of what happened. We might have done the same thing. People go mad once things happen which are beyond their means to retaliate. So saying that Sikhs are a peaceful nation, didn't they kill Indira Gandhi? They killed Indira Gandhi because they thought that she was behind the murder of Sikhs. So this is I don't agree.
I'll come back to you.
No, let me complete.
Please.
There is a reaction already within India. We know that the Khalistan movement has got it is experiencing a resurgence. We are aware of this fellow by the name of Amar Singh Pal Sidhu, who has been put behind bars for reinvigorating the Khalistan cause, and Khalsas brandish a sword. They brandish a sword. So Khalsas are by definition a people who believe in a violent struggle. So I'm not saying that every Sikh is violent, I'm not saying every Muslim is violent, but there are hardliners within every group of people. So Muslims, we call ourselves peaceful, but we can be very violent when it comes to our seeking our rights. So thank you very much for giving me time.
Mr. Iqrar, your take regarding that? The two different points of views.
I also disagree with her because the kirpan is a part of the Sikh attire. So you cannot be in a full Sikh attire unless you have a kirpan, and kirpan is a dagger. And they used to use it, when they had a fight with Mughals. So since that time, kirpan is a part and parcel of their body. So yes, they are not violent. But to take the revenge.
Right to self-defense?
Yes, self-defense, okay. But this is a part of their philosophy and part of their history and their politics. This is what I can say.
Right. Okay, Dr. Shazia, do you want to make a point?
No,
Please go ahead.
I think kill this point. You don't want to fight with it.
Fortunately, I have studied a little bit Sikhism, so they can have every right to have their own opinion. So does I. So, but the problem is that the Sikh philosophy is not based on violence. That was my point. And the kirpan and the symbolic relevance of that sword has nothing to do.
For discussion for some other show. Maybe let's come back to that very bilateral relationship and the kind of trajectory it is on between Canada and India. As Dr. Shazia Ali mentioned, this particular relationship of India with the rest of the Western powers has reached a point of an ugly divorce. Do you agree? And if
no,
yes,
it's not an ugly divorce. This is just a dip in the relationship. Canada does not want to part ways with India. India does not want to part with Canada. It doesn't make any sense. It is just a dip in relationship. They have trade relationships. They have defense relationship. But since the Canadian Sikhs are not happy with what has happened, the RAW has come into Canada and killed one of their members. You see, this is something very, very dangerous. You can't go into any other. And I just told you that they came and killed somebody in Daska. So this is something that should be highlighted to the world at large. World will turn a blind eye to it, but we must make an issue of it. We must make a point of it that Indians, the RAW is a rogue agency, and what RAW is doing is not only against Sikhs, it's also against Pakistanis.
so Pakistan had been raising this particular point of India's state sponsorship of terrorism.
But
Pakistan has shared dossiers with the United Nations also.
We have, but
don't you think when the Western powers at that particular point
Tehami
in
Sahab,
time ignored Pakistan's stance,
they will continue to ignore.
that actually emboldened India, and that fact reached to their doorsteps.
They will continue to ignore this. But the point is that we must keep on harping on this point, because India always does it. Whenever they mention Pakistan, they say state-sponsored terrorism across the border, across the line of control. So we should also get back to them and say, hey there, this is utter nonsense. These people are doing something against people from the other sovereign states in their country, and they are taking a leaf out of Mossad's philosophy to go out and kill and assassinate people. This is not allowed. This is not the norm. You cannot do it. Mossad, RAW is a rogue agency, and India is sponsoring terrorism across its borders.
Or don't you think this particular episode, this saga, the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar, has finally should actually serve as an eye-opener for the West?
It will not, but we should not allow it to die down. At all conferences, at all bilateral meetings, we should put this point forward. Like we tell the world that the Indian RAW agency has been sending fifth columnists into Pakistan. We always tell about this commander, what's his name?
Commander Kulbhushan Yadav.
Kulbhushan Yadav. So similarly, we should highlight the point that this fellow, this Indian Sikh has been killed in Canada by RAW. and Canada has proof of it. So we should highlight it at all forums. That is my point.
Right, Mr. Iqrar, don't you think when a Western world ignored what Pakistan was actually sharing with the international community, that actually emboldened India to carry out its state sponsorship of terrorism across the world?
Yeah, I agree with you, because your West doesn't believe us. No, they are facing it. But one thing, I mean, we are short of time. This is very unfortunate. It is almost a month or so. Have any journalists from Pakistan tried to get hold of this report?
Right.
Have you ever gone for any international conferences? Have we ever, start debate over in Pakistan over this issue? We are mum, simply.
Unfortunately, we are short of time. I'll have to end the show over here. Mr. Agha, Iqrar, Haroon, Senior Analyst, joining in the studio. Dr. Tughral, Yamin, Senior Analyst, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us in the studio. On Skype, we were joined by Professor Dr. Shazia Anwer, Cheema, expert in international relations. Dr. Shazia, thank you very much for your time, also for being with us on the show. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.